Dear students and colleagues, welcome to this fourth Innovation Talks of LUMSA University 2022 edition. I'm Filippo Giordano, Professor of Management at LUMSA University in Rome, and I'm the Program Director of the Master Degree in Management and Finance. Innovation Talk is an important initiative of our university, arrived at the 6th edition. As you know, it's a cycle of webinars aimed to discuss innovation, technology, sustainability, and the future of business in society with expert and opinion leaders in the business community. Innovation Talks are organized by the Department of Law, Economic, Politics, and Modern Languages in Rome and the Master Degree in Management and Finance in partnership with our Association of Alumni. In this edition, we have 6 webinars where we are discussing entrepreneurship, venture capital, business planning, and so on. And it's important to remember that these talks are part also of the teaching activities of our master's degree. In particular, are part of the courses of fintech, venture capital, entrepreneurship and new business startup, and business planning. I want to thank all the colleagues who have collaborated in the realization of this edition and the communication staff of LUMSA that is producing our talks. As I mentioned, the fil rouge of the talk is the impact of innovation in the role and the role of new technologies in changing our life and the business. And today we are going to talk about how technology is changing financial services, banking. So an important part of the business and also of our life, because the title of the talk of today is Digital Payments Trends. So I'm very pleased to leave the floor to my colleague, Professor Claudio Giannotti, that is the head of the department, but is the owner of these contents of this topic, because he's the professor, our professor of fintech in LUMSA. And Claudio will introduce our very important guest speaker of today, and will chair the webinar. Thank you, Claudio.
Thank you. Thank you, Filippo. Thank you, Professor Giordano. And welcome, everybody. I'm very glad to introduce you this innovation talk with a special lecture. And today we have the pleasure to hear from Carolina Gianardi. Carolina Gianardi is a board member of American Express, and she's vice president and general manager of the global commercial services in American Express as well. And she is also a board member of Italian Angels for Growth. So thanks a lot, Carolina, and thanks for being with us. And today we have a very challenging topic about digital payments. And no doubt that payments is one of the most interesting topic within the fintech ecosystem. So I can give you the floor. Thanks again for being with us. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, and hi everybody. I mean, the payment industry is quite, it's a complex environment, and probably today I will be able to give you only a flavor, but hopefully some information that can support you to continue going a deep dive also, from your own. What I wanted to try to do today is, first of all, share with you some data just to set the stage. And then, have a look to some key trends of the digital payment industries. who are the player and really, you know, which are the mechanism and the operating model behind the scene of the payment ecosystem. I would like to share also a couple of use cases, you know, to be really practical and, you know, to translate in our real life. And hopefully, you know, we will have time also to have some thought about the relationship between payment and cryptocurrencies, even if, you know, this area is still in great evolution. Let me just share my screen so I can bring you, you know, through a couple of slides. Hopefully everything is fine. Let me know if it's not the case. So let's start with some definition, and, you know, definition are never perfect, but they can help us, you know, as we go ahead in our conversation. You know, first of all, the concept of e-money. You know, we can define e-money as a monetary medium of exchange represented on an electronic device, e-wallet, magnetic card. But I think the most important piece to bear in mind is that its value represents a credit that, you know, we, a consumer, has versus a financial institution that is acting as an intermediary supervising. And, you know, why I stress this point, because, you know, somebody could say a cryptocurrency is an e-money. In reality, it's different, because a cryptocurrency is a virtual currency, of course, secured by cryptography, all the technology behind that. But I think what is important to stress is that it's a type of money, unregulated and digital, you know, which is issued, you know, usually from, you know, who is building it. And it's accepted among the member of a specific virtual community. So we don't have behind a financial institution acting as an intermediary supervising. Then we have digital payment, and digital payment can be any transaction where the value is transferred from an account to another electronically. And of course, we can use different electronic instruments, again, cards, wallet, or really debit directly the bank account. We hear a lot about a digital wallet, and all of us use it. And in this case, a digital wallet is a system where the user payment information and password are stored securely, and this information can be used for numerous payment method and website. And then we have a look at the mobile payment. Mobile payment probably are one of the first you know, innovative payment method that most of us experience. In the past, you know, it was mainly based on the fact of debit, the phone credit, but, you know, recently the mobile payment is much more based on virtual card embedded into the device or through a connected SIM. And then the last concept I want to highlight before, you know, we go into some number is the concept of P2P payment, peer-to-peer. And this is when the transfer of fund happen between two parties, and these two parties use their individual banking account or credit card, and typically they do leveraging an online or mobile app. Now, you could, you know, question why did we go through this key definition? Because I think it's important, because when we start to look at some number, and this slide represent a global non-cash transaction, we start, you know, to see and use some of this definition. I think what is important in this chart, on top, you know, of the size and looking how the number of transactions keep growing from 2016 to 2020 and the forecast of 2025 are two pieces of information. The first one is that card payment continue to grow. And if you look at 2025, you know, expected mix in a traditional, you know, payment, you see that 77.2%, will continue to be card. I can anticipate that one of the trends we see, and we will talk about it, is an increase in a debit card versus a credit card. The other piece of information in this chart that is quite important is how the non-traditional payment, the new payments keep growing. And again, you see in the mix on the dark bar how this percentage from 2016 is expected to grow from 8.8% to 25.2%. So definitely growing in innovative payments, growing generally speaking in the number of payment transactions. But you know what's happened in Italy, and for Italy, you know, we always refer to the number of the Politecnico di Milano that has quite extensive coverage in this subject. And again, in this chart, you know, a couple of information that are, I think, relevant. The first one is that on the left side of the chart, that in the mix of the payment, nevertheless, the decrease in 2020 for the pandemic, the incidence of card payment and e-wallet grow to 33%. From, you know, 2018 and 2019, where it was more stable. And here, you know, we include the card, e-payment, mobile payment. The important piece is that nevertheless, you know, the payment overall decreased in 2020, and we see that the cash continued decrease is percentage. When we look on the right-hand side of the chart, we see that in the first half of 2021, already the amount of digital payment in this case was higher than 2019. And in 2020, the overall digital payment were almost at the same level of 2019. So an important message. It's true that, you know, the value of the payment decreased in 2020 because of the pandemic, but digital payment stay flat, and that was a great achievement. And in particular, in the first half of 2021, the digital payment grew significantly versus 2020, but also 2019. Another important piece of information that I want like to stress, and again, we'll look at the semester because these are the most updated number. Couple of messages from this slide that I think are important. The first one is that what I mentioned before on the left-hand side. Debit card mix increase, in particular between 2020 and 2021, because in 2020, they represented 54.1% of the volume, while in 2021 they grow to 56.7%. So overall, the amount increased, but increased mainly in debit and prepay, slightly decreasing in credit card, or at least, you know, the growth, the 5.7% from 33 billion to 35 billion, not as important as for debit and prepay. But then the right-hand side, even more interesting, is again looking at the same number, but with different, you know, perspective, looking more at innovation, innovative payment. Here, two other important messages. The first one, the jump in contactless between 2020 and 2021. Definitely, again, the pandemic support on that, but I think this has also become a change in the behavior of the consumer, with probably a higher perception of security, but also, you know, of seamless journey on top, of course, of healthy security, you know, reason for the pandemic. The other important piece is that even if in absolute amount, mobile payment in store and wearable payment are low, but they more than double between 2020 and 2021. And again, when you look at the contactless mix in 2021, they represented 35.8%. In 2020, they used to represent 26.6%. and mobile payment and wearable payment move from 1.1% to 1.9%. So great summary. Again, in Italy, as we saw, globally, payment keep growing, in particular digital payment, and we see an increase in usage of a more innovative way of paying. But, which are the 6 key trends that is, worthwhile to have in mind? I mean, let's start for more, the traditional in-store retail. I mean, there is no doubt e-commerce is growing. E-commerce will keep growing, but in-store sales will continue to be the largest retail channel. In terms of share, in terms of amount. And the good news is that, even if it's in-store payment show a lot of innovation as well. Definitely on the card payment side. And, here you see some data from US, but this is exactly the same experience we see in Italy. I said before, I keep repeating, debit card growing more than credit card. Again, contactless. We talked before how contactless increased in Italy. This is a trend, across the market. But I think what is really important is that a lot of innovation is happening in store with the proximity payment. I mean, the use of a wallet, Apple Pay, one, just to quote, among the most we see in the market. But also buy now, pay later, and we will talk more about buy now, pay later, later in my speech. It's not just a matter of e-commerce. We start seeing buy now, pay later also in store where innovation is from both sides, a more seamless experience from a customer perspective, but also more efficiency in, the payment process at the cashier. So regarding, the retail processes. And definitely we see an increase in QR and barcode payment hub. That means that also, the possibility for merchant to accept payment instrument is becoming easier, faster, making, let's say, less time consuming, at the cashier, but also reducing cost. And, we will talk about that. Credit card, we said credit card still an important player, facing some challenges from debit, but credit card issuers are facing challenges also from new comer, and we will talk about that. That's why we see a lot of focus from a credit card issuer in innovating their value proposition. And the innovation in the value proposition is represented by a more focus on rewards. We see more and more, rewards happening with regard to credit card, but also lower fee, making, flexible payment. And another things very important in consumer, but, I will mention also for the B2B payment, is the financial management tool. We see more and more integration between credit card and financial management tool. And the issuer are trying to provide add value services to their customer on top, of the plastic, I'm simplifying, to make the payment. And now we go to the digital payment. We talked about digital payment before, and here there are some trends that I want to highlight because probably they are not very often addressed. I mean, definitely we talk a lot about peer-to-peer payment. And I said before, we see an increase there, and I'm sure, they will become more and more popular. But there are other 2 areas where we see a lot of innovation in digital payments. One is digital remittances. Again, something we don't talk a lot, we are more used to the traditional, way of transfer money abroad. But here with new entrants such as Remitly and Wise is the formerly TransferWise, we see big changes, and changes that are, put under stress the incumbent, because of course these new players are focusing on reducing fee that has been always, one of the challenge of the remittances, so the cost of the transfer money abroad. But I said before, B2B payments, I'm very passionate about it. It's also, because of my role today, I'm responsible for B2B payment. Here, I see great opportunity, for two reasons. The first one, because Goldman Sachs forecasts say that the B2B payments in 2030 will be 5 times the amount of the B2C payments. So huge amount, a significant number of transactions, great opportunity for innovation. And this is innovation that look after the automation of processes, the digitalization of processes, but above all, we see the B2B payment ecosystem enlarging more and more. Why? Because, the payment is just one piece that see before all the digital invoices processes, and afterwards, all the reconciliation and accounting processes. And we see more and more integration among players of the digital invoicing, of the payment, and of the accounting processes. So here we see a new player coming in, and we see an increase of attention in this type of initiative. And, just to quote, some that are quite familiar for Italy. I mean, I can refer either to Soldo, to Conto, or to Tot. And in particular, in the small business, the digital payment are, from my perspective, the next wave of innovation. No doubt e-commerce is growing, but I think what is important in commerce is not just, the desk, the web-based e-commerce, is more mobile payment and social commerce. We see much more integration inside, the social app of the opportunity to buy and pay. So here are really the next wave of innovation in e-commerce. And that's why some players that, are playing a game, in particular as a gateway, and, I will be back to the role of the gateway, they can be a really critical player to allow, the merchant to unify better the experience between channel, in person, in store, and online. The last two areas that maybe they don't, well, the first one, yes, because it's tech, is fancy and popular. The second one about regulation, probably less. But I want to address both of them because I think they are very, very important. In particular, on tech, in artificial intelligence and machine learning and blockchain, the technology is already playing and will continue playing a greater role, in particular in fraud prevention, early detection. We know that the players in the market are already making extensive use of this technology, but we see more and more, in particular also for process automation. And, definitely this one has impact in terms of security of the transaction, in terms of the reduction of cost for the player, but it has also an impact on the time to transaction. So how quickly transaction can be processed, how real time we can be, and how safe we can be also from the point of view of the consumer. But, machine learning and artificial intelligence play an important role also in terms, of user experience, because we see more and more voice-activated transaction, biometric authentication, smart assistant payment verification. And again, For the player in the market, they are mainly used for security, anti-fraud reason, but from a customer experience, they make, you know, everything more seamless and fastest and let's say peaceful. But we cannot forget regulation. Payment is an area heavily regulated. We see year after year the increase in the regulation. And I just want to quote two important regulations, PSD2 and the Consumer Credit Directive, for different reasons. The PSD2 is already live, is definitely focused on increasing transparency, security, increased competition. You know, it's thanks to PSD2 that a new player in the market like ASP, so account initiator service provider, so the account aggregator have been set up, or the PSP, so the payment initiator service provider, leveraging, you know, open banking and bringing an impact, important impact on the stronger customer authentication. But then we have the Consumer Credit Directive. With the innovation happening in the landscape, there is a lot of attention, and at the moment the Consumer Credit Directive is under consultation at EU level. And this is really something we need to keep in our radar, because there are two areas, among others, that you know, are under scrutiny. One is the buy now, pay later, and I will explain why later on. And the other one is crypto. I said before, you know, that crypto are not regulated. There is a plan with the Consumer Credit Directive to start to have more regulation around the crypto assets. So anybody who is interested in the industry should, you know, keep an eye, you know, on these two regulations. The card ecosystem, you know, is quite articulated. I already, you know, during the previous message, I gave you quote some of them, and some of them are more like visible, like I said before, to us as consumer. I mean, a card issuer is typically the bank, you know, that provide us with the card. The merchant is where we buy. I mean, the merchant acquirer is the financial entity that, as I said before, allow the merchant to collect the payment, you know, from their customer. And of course, the card network, you know, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, are the one that, you know, enable the relationship, you know, between the merchant and the bank issuer. But there are some players that probably, I mean, if we are not deep in the system, we know less. And these are the gateway. And I think the concept of gateway is quite important, because a lot of innovation is happening through gateway. And the gateway are, you know, the company that provide the infrastructure that link merchant and customer to the payment networks. And we will have opportunity, you know, to go deeper on that concept. We have then recurring billing payment provider. So they offer merchant, you know, the ability to set their customer on a regular recurring payment. And then we have independent sales organization and MSP, merchant service provider. They are non-banking financial entities, while I said before merchant acquirer are financial entity. And they are affiliated with bank, and they are certified with the card network, and they resell the payment processing service to merchant. So why this player I wanted, you know, to highlight during, you know, our conversation, because these play more and more role inside the payment ecosystem. And I think already in this small chart, you know, you can see that, for example, Stripe is under recurring billing, of the top right box, together with Zuora, Chargify, etc. But Stripe is also with the 0, among the independent sales organization. And Stripe is also, in the middle box at the top as a gateway. So we see players that start to be present in different pieces of the value chain. And again, you can see PayPal, both in digital wallet in the box top left, or as gateway, again, in the middle, box together with Stripe. And I think this is important because they are the one driving a lot of innovation in the industry. And this is the payment flow. And I'm not going to describe, the whole flow, but I think what I want to stress here is that behind the payment that we make with like a wallet or with the plastic card, there are a significant number of players between, the moment in which you use the card at the POS, the point of sales, and the moment in which that transaction has been authorized, and then the money gets to the merchant, and we are debit, to our current account. And each of these players historically were very specialized. So we had the gateway, we had the processor, we had card networks. What we see now is that new players tend to cover different pieces of the chain value. And one example that I just, circulated here are Stripe and Adyen that play different role along this value chain. And this is where we see a lot of innovation, in particular on the gateway, because I said before, if you look at this chart, the gateway is really, the first counterpart, let me use this term, in the moment in which the payment transaction happen at the merchant checkout. And the gateway today are having a great role in making the checkout experience very effective with a great seamless impact from a customer perspective, because the biggest challenge for the merchant is, transform the purchase or the intention actually to purchase in a really purchase. So gateway for me is really the key word as we move forward. And I'm not going, through this chart, but again, that's to let you see how many players, how many different roles the different player can have. And again, I've circulated Stripe, Adyen, I mentioned before, but I also circulated in the central part the e-commerce payment like, Klarna or Split It. And the reason for that is because, I know buy now, pay later is a big theme in the industry. And let's have a look at buy now, pay later, because again, it looks like straightforward. But again, I think it's worthwhile to understand what is behind a buy now, pay later model. I mean, there is no doubt that, all of us experience while, doing a purchase for a good or service from a merchant, the button, giving us actually the opportunity to pay now, pay by installment using whatever, provider. Let's use, ScalaPay, that is, the Italian unicorn, and we'll touch base later on about ScalaPay. I mean, that's happening at the checkout moment. That's why I was saying, checkout is really the area where we see most of the innovation. And what happened at that point is that when we decide to use this option, then we enter into an agreement with the buy now, pay later provider. There is a contract. We must be aware that there is a contract. And this is the contract that, manages the fact that we will pay either in 3 installments, 4 installments, or even, in one unique solution, within 14 days. And that's where, the whole checkout process happens. So it means once we have agreed with the buy now, pay later provider, we go back to the merchant web page, we complete, the purchase, and typically at that moment, the first installment is paid. And the other 2 or 3 are coming, later on. 2 pieces. Here, what happened is that the consumer pay an installment, but the buy now, pay later provider paid the full amount of the purchase to the merchant. It can be, after a certain period of time, but, the full price is given to the merchant at one-off, minus a discount, because really the cost of this service is taken by the merchant. The other point is that the risk of the unpay, the fact that, the following installment will not be collected from the consumer, is in charge of the buy now, pay later provider. And that brings me back to the consumer directive I mentioned before, because today this service is not is not managed like a lending product. Because, very technical reason, the length of the number of days, in which the payment is delayed. But that's the point. Today, buy now, pay later is not a lending product. It's not subject to the lending regulation. And one of the things that the Consumer Credit Directive is looking into is if buy now, pay later should be regulated differently. That's why we see some trend in the buy now, pay later player that start to add additional services on top of the installment payment service. 2 things from this chart. The first one I think is interesting if we look just at Klarna to understand, that the investor in Klarna are of 3 main types. The first one is venture capital. You are not surprised, and Sequoia Capital, is one of these. But then you have corporate investor, and corporate investor from 2 perspectives. One is Visa. Of course, we are in the card network payment, so something you would expect. But the other one is Macy, and Macy is one of the largest department stores. So again, different interest for different reasons from different players in like an operator like Klarna. Now, buy now, pay later is growing, will continue grow. I said, in e-commerce, but also at point of sales. But we see also some player like MasterCard and Visa starting to offering their own solution of buy now, pay later. And of course, the number of merchants already accepting MasterCard and Visa is definitely, larger than player like Klarna or ScalaPay. And the other point is that, the buy now, pay later model brings with it, and I mentioned before, the risk of credit. So the risk of unpaid. So we see players like Klarna try to enlarge, their service. And in fact, recently, if somebody, follow this player, probably realize that they have started to, let's say, give evidence more and more also to their pay now solution. And this is not something that, they built right now. This is something they have, in their shelf since 2014 when they acquired SoFort. So Klarna is trying to enlarge its scope from, the buy now, pay later, trying to entering more and more in the online banking payments. So I'm sure we'll see more on that. And if we look, at the 2 Italian unicorn, if we still stay on buy now, pay later, and we talk about ScalaPay, ScalaPay is typical player of buy now, pay later. I think, all of us are aware of the money they raised recently, the huge valuation they reach, and also, the size of the business that they managed to build in only 3 years. But if you read, the strategy presented from their CEO, you can see that they are already thinking, further the buy now, pay later. And, they really see themselves as an enabler to provide the merchant, with the checkout journey continuously, improve with great customer experience, with add value service. So they really play the role of gateway that I mentioned at this stage more than once, earlier on. When we look at Satispay differently, it's an e-money institution. And in fact, they enable the customer that, have e-money in the wallet to send money and make, offline and online payment using smartphone. And I think the other important piece here is that, they have a closed loop acquirer model. That means that they connect directly consumer and merchant. And that, of course, from a merchant perspective, has a positive impact also in terms of cost. Another trend, and again, a different player, moving different direction. I mentioned before, Scalapay see themselves like a gateway, innovative, a lot of service, but as a gateway. PayPal is a gateway, but really, how they are developing their strategy is more in the direction of this super app. What does it mean, super app? It means, inside the app, on top of the typical payment feature, mobile wallet, peer-to-peer payment, charity donation, they start adding a lot of servicing, trying to make, the app one-stop shop, let's say, for the consumer, with a saving account, bill management tool, direct deposit, the buy now, pay later, or other form, of installment payment, gift card and rewards. And again, crypto and buying, selling. We see more and more the player in the payment ecosystem moving in the direction of crypto. But, in which way? And I'm going, to close and leave, for some question. Hopefully, I'm not running out of time. I'm closing, with the two view of the three card network regarding crypto: Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. And I must say that, their view regarding crypto is evolving. They are in their own journey, but, the reality is that they see their role mainly either, to allow the customer to buy cryptocurrency, so to use, their payment system to buy cryptocurrency. They are less involved really, in allowing in their network cryptocurrency payment. The other piece is that they are really focusing on how the central bank are moving regarding digital currencies. And so, they keep their talk with the central bank, to understand the potential opportunity for public and private partnership. So they are not in the arena of, the cryptocurrency mining and the cryptocurrency more as an asset. They are more like, enabling their customer to use a cryptocurrency. And this is for Visa. When you look, at the company statement for MasterCard, again, they, team up with Wirex and BitPay to allow their customer to transact using their cryptocurrency. And, they try to support, merchant to try, to accept cryptocurrency. And again, working with the major central bank around the world to understand their plan to launch new digital currencies. Probably American Express of the third one is the one, more focus, as I said, on allowing a customer to buy crypto. Here, I'm referring specifically to the statement of our CEO, Stephen Squeri, when he discussed the quarterly result in October 21. I think we are really looking into, our payment to allow the purchase of cryptocurrency. We don't, we don't really see ourselves heavily involved. We see cryptocurrency more as an asset. Of course, we see as well, potential role for digital, currency in the cross-border payment. That could be an arena. So I think crypto and payment, still a long way to go. Very important how the Consumer Credit Directive will regulate them. So needs to keep, monitor. And I can see, experiment, partnership, test, but not yet, a heavy role of cryptocurrency in the digital payment world. I think I'm done. Hopefully was clear and not, too run.
No. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Carolina. I think you gave us a lot of insights and a lot of information also for students to get by in these complex ecosystem and services. Okay, first of all, I want to invite students to write down the question if they have, so I can collect questions and make the question to our lecturer. Okay, you talk about integration. That is a basic point within payments, integration among players, services, and so on. But why, in your opinion, you have a long experience not only in payments but in financial services overall? So why do you think we have so many changes, so many integrations, so many innovation in payments respect to other fields in financial system, lending, deposits? I can understand that I talk to my students that payments is the financial service that we are used to use day by day. So it's very popular, it's very common. We can pay €1, €1.50 for a coffee and for books and so on. So I can understand that it's very popular. We use payments every day. But do you think which is do you think there are other reasons for which we have so many innovations, so many changes in payments?
I think I have couple of. I can see a couple of reasons there. Definitely, as I show in the value chain, there are a lot of players, and there are a lot of processes. So a lot of room for digitalizing even small pieces of the value chain. So I think most of the innovation and most of the players start trying to address a specific challenge or opportunity in a specific piece of the value chain, and then they, from there enlarge. So I think payment, because of the operating model, gives more opportunity than other financial service like current account or lending or investment. So that's I think is one reason. The second reason is that because of this technological part, there are players that do not need to be regulated. So only some players in the value chain are heavily regulated. So that gives room to more player to play a role a lot, in the user experience. That is more difficult when you talk about a more complex product where most of the players in the value chain are heavily regulated. And of course, the size, the size in terms of number of transactions, the size in terms of number of users, and then the interaction, again, with other financial services like insurance, current accounts. So I see that as a major driver.
Okay, definitely agree with you. Also because thanks to payments, provider can attract customers and can provide different services, no? Together with payments. So look, it's very interesting, the payment flow, because from payer to payee, we have so many steps, so many players, so many work. So you gave us a lot of insights about gateways, and is a super, very actual work and full of innovation. But in your opinion, where is the real value? I mean, from a economic perspective point of view, if you think to get money, to get fees, in which part of the value chain you think is more interesting to bet and to invest in this moment?
It's not an easy question, because I think this is an industry where a lot of the innovation is moving in the direction of reducing cost for customer, reducing cost of merchant, that historically were an important piece of the value built in the payment system. So I see two major areas. One, is more on how technology can make a lot of process more automated, and that means the cost structure of the player, in particular, more the incumbent, can decrease, and so the margin can improve. So definitely, I see a lot of technology on the process. I talk, reduction in fraud cost, reduction, in manual processes versus automated process reconciliation. So that's an area where, the player, in particular, the financial institution, can gain margin. On the other end, the big challenge is really in building up add value services to the customer, so that the customer are willing to pay, because one of the risks I see is really the tendency of the consumer to expect zero cost on the payment business model, not knowing that behind, as I described, there is a machine that needs to operate. So I think add value services, and then of course the cross-selling of other product on the customer base. And that's one of the reasons why some of the players today are ready to take a lot of losses, or at least not make money for a while, because the objective is to acquire a significant number of clients, to customer, to start to cross-sell the product. And it's not by chance. We saw before that PayPal is talking about adding savings in the service to their customer. So I think it is not an easy question. I think it's not yet clear, but definitely efficiency, cost reduction, and add value and cross-sell are the two major areas I see opportunity for margin increase.
Okay, thanks a lot. I invite again students to write questions because we have some new texts from students. So if they are interested, they can write the questions. So you talk about technology, about cross-selling. Cross-selling is an old topic in financial system, but nowadays is really, really actual. Talking about technology, cross-selling, we cannot avoid to talk about big techs, obviously. So which is your opinion about, we know that all the big techs are involved in payments so far. I mean, obviously the biggest big tech. Which is your opinion about their activity, their perspectives, just your consideration about these player within the ecosystem?
I think generally speaking, that's my opinion. You know, I could be just, you know, maybe there is an announcement tomorrow and, you know, I'm completely against what I'm going to say. But having been in, you know, the financial service for many years, I think big tech do not have an interest to enter, you know, in an arena where they become heavily regulated. So they are interested in payment for some of the reasons I said before, you know, because they can lock better their client, they can use, you know, payment to make more efficient and to increase their core sale, or, you know, to lock in more their customer. I think, you know, for their model, for, you know, how they are used to interact with the customer, you know, what they are very good in doing, I don't see them, you know, becoming a bank. Or, you know, looking, they are asking for license, you know, because they are asking for account initiator, service provider, and PSP. So they are asking at European level. Most of these players have, you know, the request in progress. But I think, you know, it is more in the sense of making the relationship with the customer stronger, making the payment experience in their platform, you know, seamless, try to generate more traffic and to keep the customer more in their, you know, platform, you know, more than, you know, really thinking of becoming a financial institution.
Yeah, I agree with you also because, you know, in the financial system, we have a lot of legacy. And sometimes they do prefer to avoid this sort of legacy in old business or traditional business. So my last question is about your experience in Amex, American Express, and what do you think should be, which is the strategy of an important player, for important player of the card system, of card payments, and if you see, which is your perspective about the future of this circuit, of these players in the value chain?
I mean, I think generally speaking, you know, this player will continue to, you know, to be critical as long as, you know, we will continue to innovate. So, you know, for American Express, but like MasterCard and Visa, you know, innovation is critical, you know, to keep up with the growth and the opportunity of the market. Where I see, you know, and now I'm talking more from my perspective, B2B, and, you know, I mentioned during my presentation, I think there is a lot of opportunity on the, you know, the player like ourselves in the B2B payment, in particular, you know, in supplier payment and in the integration of the payment solution with the digital invoicing and accounting system. And that's, you know, a lot related to the small enterprises, so SMEs. So that's where we are focusing, and in particular, I'm focusing specifically for the Italian market.
Okay, thanks. I agree also, because if you see a lot of payments, modern payments that we have, we can do that thanks to credit cards or thanks to credit debt.
No, and we think about card always with the plastic, but, behind there are, a lot of digital payment that happen, without the plastic, directly with what we call a virtual POS. So I think there is a lot for player like ourselves, but there is a lot in particular for the SMEs, as I said, to optimize their processes, to benefit also, of working capital optimization, because, some of the solution allow them, to optimize the number of days of, payment and cash-in. And there is a lot to do in terms of education. I think, we talk about consumer financial education, but I think there is a lot that we can do, for the SME, in particular in Italy, where, the traditional banking solution are still, the main utilized.
Yeah, the supply chain finance is
Absolutely.
a very interesting topic, and I agree with you that small and medium enterprises need to be helped in this field.
Exactly.
So, Carolina, thanks again. I have a lot of questions, but we can do next time. And thanks a lot for your talk. I think that is very helpful for students for knowing this service and what is moving on in the financial ecosystem.
And I'm sure more to come.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much for hosting.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.